for those of you who have seen me before, thank you so much for coming back to kind of go over what we talked about. For those who may not have seen me, I really appreciate you taking the time to tune in, and hopefully you'll walk away today with some strategies that you haven't heard before, or maybe just a reminder of some things that you have. So what we're going to do is just start off by talking about why we're doing this. We get busy and things happen. We are putting out fires all the time, and so we have great intentions of going back to work and putting all these things into play that we learned about either at an association meeting or maybe in one of our management trainings. And sometimes it's just easy to forget those things that we talked about because life happens and work happens. So because we're doing this, let's see, there we go. So the main reason that we're really talking so much about retention strategies is because it costs a lot of money when people leave. So really, when we talk about the true cost of turnover, it looks something like this. So when our frontline staff leave, okay, the ones that are the hourly workers, those that are kind of in that box between $8 and $15 an hour, even though they are a lower wage worker, it can cost us as much as $5,000 to $10,000 in order to replace them. Whenever our middle management leaves, our office staff, that cost can rise to between $15,000 and $25,000. And when we're talking about specialized employees, those who may be in medical profession that are specialized, those who are IT, those who are engineering, those really critical high dollar positions, it can cost upwards of $100,000 just to replace them. And so that's why we are spending so much time on talking about retention strategies so that we can actually keep these people instead of having them walk out the door. So what really is the goal? We know that we've got this revolving door of people coming and going. And the goal is not to stop the revolving door. That's not even a realistic goal. We're never going to get to a place where people don't come and don't go. But our goal is to extend the tenure of every new hire so that if we've got that employee that typically might stay 6 months, it is a win if we can get them to 18 months. And if that employee just stays a little bit longer than they would have stayed before, you are getting more productivity out of them, you're getting more time to train them, and ultimately you are getting more for your dollar with that employee at that particular time, whether it's 6 months or 12 months or 18 months. So we have it in our head that we want our employees to stay a long time. So we've been in this management mindset, so to speak, for about 40 years now, where everything was all about longevity in the workplace. You wanted somebody to come in and you really hoped that they were going to stay a large portion of their career, maybe possibly their entire career with you. But today we've got to really flip that switch and start thinking in a more short-term employment mindset. Because when we recalibrate this tenure meter for success, what it does is it allows us to not be so down on ourselves when somebody walks out the door. It feels like, I talk to people all the time and they say, it just feels like people just are going and going and going, and we just feel downtrodden, like there's this pressure. So if we recalibrate that tenure meter for success so that it's a win if we keep them a little bit longer, that mentally can help us get through these times. We have to remember that the employee and employer relationship has shifted, and so no longer are employees feeling loyal, so to speak, to their employer. But remember, employers are not loyal to their employees either. If a company has to choose between its people and the bottom line, I think we would all agree that most companies would choose the bottom line. And then when we flip this switch from long-term thinking to short-term or shorter-term thinking, what this allows us to do is actually plan for that and maximize the time that we have with each person so that we're not wasting precious time trying to train them and get them up to speed. If somebody's a 6-month employee, you don't need to train them on every single thing they need to know. And so that allows you to take it back down a notch and say, okay, what do they really need to know in this amount of time that is the average tenure in this particular position? So they say that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Well, if we want new results, we have to change our mindset. So I hear a lot of times, well, we've got this great company culture and this is what we want for our people. And we put it out there and everybody knows they can recite the mission statement or the vision statement. But honestly, guys, what's on the wall doesn't necessarily walk down the hall. Just because we put it out there, just because they know what it is, does not mean that that is actually what's happening on a daily basis in our workplace. So let's talk about the real tools, because that's what we're here to do, to recap what we've talked about before and make sure that you really understand and have the ammunition that you need in order to retain people longer. So I guess the first thing we have to do is ask ourselves the question, are we really managing in that old style? Is that really what we want? We are mad when they leave. We want people to just come to work, stay till the job gets done, don't ask questions. Or have we started to adapt our mindset to the new way of thinking where our employees want work-life balance? They want more from their job than just going to it and grinding it out every day and then going back home. So first we need to ask ourselves the question, are we managing the old way or are we managing the new way? Here's what successful managers do. Successful managers say, what if we could? Instead of we can't because. How many times do we hear throughout the day or throughout the week, oh, yeah, you know, we tried that once, but that just didn't work. Nope, that's not going to work. We can't do that. Successful managers say, what if we could? Successful managers reevaluate those traditional definitions of what a job looks like, of what work ethic looks like. Successful managers communicate their expectations. There's a lot of unwritten expectations in the workplace today. Things that we say, you know what, they should just know that. That's common sense. But successful managers don't rely on common sense. Successful managers communicate their expectations. They maintain an open dialogue with their team. There's transparency there. It's not just do this and you expect them to go do it. It's actually a conversation between their team. Successful managers coach others to be more effective. You're only as good as your weakest link. And if you're not coaching everybody to be more effective, then you're only as good as the least effective person. And successful managers treat their people as individuals. You know, there's a lot to be said for using someone's name. If you don't use someone's name on a regular basis, what that tells them is that you either don't really know who they are or you don't care. Think about when you go to a restaurant and you use the waiter or waitress's name. 9 times out of 10, you get a smile and you get better service. So when we treat our employees as individuals, that allows them to feel as if you care about them and they are a more valued part of the team. So management effectiveness is really critical. You know, the number one reason people say they leave a job is because of their immediate supervisor. But it really doesn't matter what happens in the workplace. You can have great recruiting, you can have great onboarding, you can have great training. But if that manager or that supervisor is not effective, you might as well just go ahead and open the door for them and push them on out. Because it's our frontline supervisors, our immediate supervisor, that people say is the number one reason they leave a job. So the first tool that we're going to just recap quickly is developing relationships. How well do you know your people? Do you know what their family situation is? Do you know their personal priorities or their hobbies, or whether or not they have more than one job? A lot of times I hear people say, of course I know my people. And then you delve deeper into it and find out that really what they know is whether or not they're married, whether or not they've got kids, maybe where they live or what they've done before, but they really don't go that level deeper to find out what really motivates people. You don't know a little bit about people's family situation. How can you know what their personal priorities are and what makes them tick? How can you motivate them and encourage them in a way that makes them want to work and want to work for you? So we have to be able to get to know our people a little bit better and understand what keeps them up at night. We know what keeps us up at night, but have you ever thought about the fact that our employees have things that keep them up at night as well? And remember, one size doesn't fit all. We are such a diverse population today that everybody really is looking for something different, and they don't want to be pigeonholed. They don't want you to say, look, fit inside our box. They say, we don't want a box. We want to be able to come into the box if we want or go back out of the box. One size today doesn't fit all. So for those of you who have seen me before, remember we've talked about how to have a conversation with our employees. And I'm just going to run quickly through these 7 steps again of how we have a conversation with our employees. And this is a two-way conversation where we're asking questions and getting them to the point where they want to talk back. So of course, we have to use their name. Next, we talk about where they're from, right? Connections on where people are from or where they live are very, very strong. Think of where you are, and when you meet someone new, it's kind of an immediate connection if someone lives or is from the same place that you're from. Same thing with our family. We ask questions about their family, okay? We can't just always ask the question, are you married? Do you have kids? Okay, those are kind of the standard things. But remember, our families look different today than they did before. And don't forget, for those of us who are dog or cat lovers, those are our kids. That's the family that we love. So one time I was sitting on, I had come back from a conference and I got on an airplane. I was dog tired. I really didn't want to talk to anybody, but I thought I'm going to have a conversation with the lady that's sitting next to me. So I was kind of going through this conversation stack and I came to family. And so I asked her about her kids and she said, yeah, she's got 2 sons. And I said, well, do you have any pets? Let me tell you, for the next hour and a half, I saw pictures of her 5 dogs. I saw at least 100 pictures between her phone and her Facebook page. I saw their Halloween costumes and their Christmas costumes, and I saw them playing in different places. That was what was important to her. And when we left that plane, she gave me a hug and she said, it was so great to meet you. And I really didn't even have to do anything except take her to a place where she wanted to talk about what was important to her. After that, obviously, we can have conversations about work. Where did they work before? What made them come to work for you? Why did they quit somewhere else? We can talk about travel. Where do you like to go? What do you do on spring break or Christmas break or all those things related to travel? What are their hobbies? It's great to know people's hobbies because that's a wonderful way to connect people within the workplace. So if I know that I like to play golf, guess what? I want to find other people who like to play golf as well. And that gives us a connection at work that makes it a little more personal than if I don't know anything else about the other people I'm working with. And finally, we can just ask about what they're thinking. You know, what are your ideas about different things? You can talk about the news, you can talk about the weather, you can talk about anything. But this is our conversation map on how we get to know our people. And this is really, really critical to developing relationships that are meaningful within the workplace, because people are not loyal to a company. People are loyal to relationships. If you were given the opportunity to choose your family or your company, I doubt that anybody would choose their company. They would choose their family. And so really, we've never been loyal to a company, but we are very loyal to relationships that are meaningful to us. The next thing we have to do is ask questions. Don't make assumptions. So many times we assume that we know what people are thinking or we know what they want, but we have to ask the questions. So we do that in lots of different ways. We have employee surveys. We certainly recommend that you survey at least every 6 months or so, because if people are leaving quickly, right? If they're leaving somewhere between that 6 and 12 month mark, or maybe they don't even make it there, the only people that you're really getting a true assessment of are the people that stay a long time. And so you're not getting the reasons for why they're actually leaving. Have stay interviews. We're going to talk about those here in just a few minutes, so I'm going to kind of skip over that. But stay interviews are a great way to get to know your people and find out really what's going on in the company. What's the temperature look like with your employees? Staff councils, town halls, those are great ways to ask the questions that can drive what we're trying to do. And if we don't ask those questions and we make assumptions, many times we make the wrong assumptions. Number 2, know the why. Okay, there's a lot of talk out there about really being able to explain why. We have raised a generation that has asked the question why, and we gave them the answers. The reason we did that as parents is because many of us who are older, I'm an older Gen Xer, many of us who are Gen Xers and baby boomers, when we asked the question why, we were told because I said so. And we didn't like that answer. So when our kids came along and they asked us the questions, we gave them the answers. And they want them when they come to work as well. So it's very, very important to be able to explain why to our employees about all kinds of things. And when I say the why, that doesn't mean just saying, well, because it's our policy or because it's regulation. Because honestly, a new employee doesn't care a lot about those things. They want to know, how does it affect me? So when we look at our policies and procedures, we have to be able to explain the why in terms of our employees. So I encourage you to go back and look at some of those things and really say, can I explain this in a way that makes sense to the employee from their perspective? The third tool is learn to coach. When we say the word boss, a lot of times people just have this image in their head of this boss who's like, oh, I'm telling you what to do and you better do it. But actually what we want to do is we want to bring an environment of coaching into the workplace, because coaching is very, very different than being a boss. A coach reinforces the rules of play. Okay, if we had a football team, we would not be effective if we didn't know what the rules of football were. So it's okay to reinforce the rules of play in the workplace as well. And it's the coach's responsibility to make sure that their team understands how those rules work and why they're important. A coach provides a safe practice environment so that if somebody makes a mistake, we encourage them to try it again, as opposed to one and done, you're off the field. A coach provides encouragement. It might look something like this. Look, I know you're struggling with this, but I picked you for my team because I believe you can do it. Let's try it again until we get it right. I know you can do it. A coach allows individuals to take ownership of their place on the team. The way we work today is very team-centered, and every person on the team has a vital role, especially when we're talking about some of those positions where if somebody's not there, you've got overtime to pay. So helping people understand that their place within the organization really matters is critical. The coach builds the team for group responsibility, right? All for one, one for all. We're either all winners or we're not. And then a coach is very good at explaining why instead of just giving the policies. Think of it this way. If a football coach were to call a play and he were to tell the running back, I need you to be on the right 30-yard line, but he told him nothing else, That person might run to the right 30-yard line. But if he says, look, I need you to be on the right 30-yard line because when the ball is snapped, the quarterback is going to throw it to you and it's your job to run it into the end zone. That's what it looks like to explain the why, so that you understand this is a group effort and what is my place within that. We have to transition away from punitive to incentive. Punitive looks like if you're late one more time, you're out of here. But instead, we have to set clear expectations of what we want. We have to understand our employees' reality, because many times our employees do not live in the same world that we live in as leaders. We have to be consistent and firm, and that's okay. And we always have to recognize when they do something well. So ask yourself the question, are you managing from behind the desk? Can a coach coach from the locker room? A coach has to be on the sideline with their team. If the team doesn't see you, they will not learn to trust you. And by all means, when somebody new comes in, we a lot of times want to put them with the most seasoned employee, perhaps the one that's been there the longest, because you know that they can teach them how to get the job done. But many times that seasoned employee is the one with a bad attitude, who's waiting for retirement, who is not interested at all in change. And we have got to do this. We've got to stop allowing people to eat their young. I know some of you are laughing because it happens everywhere. But we can't turn our new people who are excited over to people that have a bad attitude, even if they are the most experienced. We have to find somebody to coach them that's still excited and is on board with what you're doing. Tool number 4 is communicate clearly. So some of you may have been in a workshop with me where I do this exercise. The way this works is I ask people to follow the directions, okay? And then I give them about 20 seconds, and then I ask them to put their pen down. And I ask, what did you do? Well, I get lots of answers. People tell me that they drew a bow tie, a bow and arrow, they drew a hair bow or a bow for a present. And those are typically the ones that I get quickly. But the more I push, the more I get answers like, well, what about a violin bow? Or what about a bow and a piece of wood? What about this, a bow? Spelled the same way, right? All I did was say, follow these directions. The point in communicating clearly is that sometimes we think we have communicated clearly, but our audience does not understand what we have asked them to do. They give us results based on their own knowledge and experience. And so if we don't communicate our expectations clearly, we will not get the results that we're looking for. I have had as many as 12 different answers for draw a bow, 3 little words. So ask yourself, are you really communicating what you want? And the most effective way that we do that is through the use of pictures, through the use of videos, and through the use of telling stories. Stories capture people's imagination, and we think in pictures. So it's easier to listen to a story and visualize it in your head than to be handed a manual and say, read these instructions and then go do it. Communicating your expectations is the kind and professional thing to do. If we don't communicate what our expectations are, when our people fail to meet those expectations, it's not their fault. It's really our fault. So we've got to set our employees up for success by communicating what we expect in the clearest way possible. Tool number 5 are those stay interviews that we talked about. If you want more information on this, whenever this is over with, let us know, send us an email, and we'll give you a link to our website because we've got 12 suggested stay interview questions that you start with. But for those of you who are saying, hey, what are stay interviews? Here's what they are. So a stay interview is when you talk to your people while they're still there. I often ask people, how do you find out, why people leave? And they say, well, hopefully we can get an exit interview. Well, what I say back is that an exit interview is an autopsy. So a stay interview allows you to talk with your people while they're still there. The benefits of doing that is it gives you the opportunity to fix things before people walk out the door and replicate things that are happening that are good. So we recommend that you do stay interviews at 30, 60, 90-day intervals, not with their annual review. This is a conversation. It's not a sit down with your pencil and paper and write down the answers to their question. This is somebody talking to them and having a conversation, 5 to 10 minute casual conversation to find out what's really going on in their head and in their workplace. Consider doing a monthly or quarterly rotation where you or your managers can talk with everyone that works for them. And so how often do you do stay interviews? If you're not doing them, contact us and we'll help you figure out what's the best way to start. But we recommend 30, 60, 90 days. Start with your new employees and then work your current employees into that schedule. And so what questions do you ask? Like I said, we've got 12 that we recommend you start with. But by all means, don't ask yes or no questions. Keep them open-ended. The idea is to get our employees talking so we will know what is going on in their head. Tool number 6, show appreciation. It's often said that's what they get a paycheck for. Well, folks, compensation and appreciation are not the same. Appreciating somebody for doing something means that you take the time to acknowledge that they either didn't have to do it, or maybe they did it better than they had before, or maybe they've never done it and they did it for the first time. Appreciation doesn't take any extra time. Saying thank you takes less than a second. What would it look like if we just took the time to say thank you to our employees? There's lots of different ways that we can show our appreciation for them. But the easiest and most cost-effective is to take the time to say, you know what, I really appreciate you being on time today. I know that sometimes it's hard for you to get here, but I noticed it and I really appreciate that. Don't you think that that would have a positive effect on that employee? We were working with a company, it was a manufacturer, and they had a terrible, terrible tardy rate and a call-off rate. The only thing they did different was that the president of the company came down to the floor, to the line, every Friday, stood beside the time clock, and as people punched out for the weekend, he shook their hand and he said, "Thanks for being here this week. We couldn't have done it without you." And do you know that their call-off rate and their tardiness rate plummeted because someone took the time to notice that they had been there and tell them that they appreciated it. So here's a few more tools before we go on to question and answer. Compensation and advancement are not what they used to be, okay? It used to be that there was a vertical hierarchy and someone had to fall off the top of the ladder or be pushed off the top of the ladder or die before anybody else could move up. But today, what it looks like for employees today is it looks like a jungle gym. Okay, remember, employees want choices for things. And so they may say, you know what, I want to try this. And I like it or I don't. And then they may say, oh, I would like to try this over here. Okay, so it looks more like a jungle gym where people want the opportunity to bounce from place to place to figure out exactly what it is that they like, where their sweet spot is perhaps for the amount of money that they make. But the point is that people want options. How can we take that carrot, okay, that once a year annual review where you get your raise, okay? How can we take that carrot and chop it up into baby carrots so that instead of having to wait 364 more days until I get another raise, I get a little bit of that maybe at the 3-month mark. And then if I know that I have the possibility of getting a little bit more of that at the 6-month mark, I'm more likely to stay and work for it because I can see the future in smaller increments. A year looks like a long time to today's worker. And how can we build specific competency levels for the different jobs that we have? There's so many jobs out there that have the same job title, but we know that people have different skill sets within those. So if we allow people to take away that flat hierarchy and know that they are in control of their raise or their move up to a new position, it can motivate them to stay longer. It is no secret that employees today are going to bounce. The question is, are you going to let them bounce out of your company, or are you going to help them bounce internally? Make that jungle gym inside your company so that they can go from place to place within your organization as opposed to going outside of it to find what they really want to do. Consider advancement without a timeline. That old management mindset said that, nope, here's when and where and how you can move up. But if we give people the opportunity to advance at their own pace, that allows the ones who are really motivated and true leaders to rise above and show themselves to you. You'll have some people that have no desire to ever move up. And that's okay too, because you always need people at every competency level. But if you could take a job, let's say you were in healthcare and you were working with a certified nursing assistant, a CNA, okay? What if you allowed that CNA to advance without a timeline so that if they learn a new set of skills, they bump up and perhaps they get a small pay raise? And then if they're motivated to do more, they can learn some more skills and become competent at those skills, and they can bump themselves up and maybe make a little more money. What that allows them to do is to move at their own pace, which people today want freedom and flexibility. They want to be able to be in control of what they're doing inside their work life and inside their home life. It allows them to level up at their own pace, and then it allows them to be compensated for their actual value that they bring to the company. So successful leaders work hard to gain the trust and loyalty of their employees. They understand the millennial mindset. They understand what the younger worker is thinking. They ask questions and they don't judge their people. They're more transparent with their team. They tell them the why. Remember, if you're not transparent with your team, they'll make it up. And the stories that they make up about what's really going on will always be way, way, way more entertaining than the truth. Successful leaders coach their staff to be better. And successful leaders continue to learn and evolve. They don't get to a point to where they say, okay, I'm the manager, gonna sit back and relax now. They continue to learn and grow. So if we want things to change, we've got to change our mindset, because the definition of insanity is continuing to do the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Sarah and answer any questions you have.
Yes, thank you so much, Leah. This is such great, valuable information that I know we all need to hear.
Super.
It's definitely something that we're all working through these days, and we're very excited. Thank you again for joining us for this flash webinar. We will now enter in the time where we're going to do question and answer. You can put your questions to me directly if you want to stay anonymous, or to everyone in the chat area, or feel free to even unmute and just go ahead and ask at this time. We'll just wait for some of those to come in and just give it a few minutes there.
Yep. I would love to know what things you guys are doing that are working, or what areas have you tried that you're struggling with?
I did have one question come in right now, Leah.
Okay.
It says, how would you recommend we be more transparent with staff?
You know, so today's employee completely expects to know everything that's going on. I think the most effective way to be transparent with your staff is know beforehand exactly how much information is allowed. Okay, there are obviously things that you cannot tell for either legal purposes, HIPAA purposes, whatever. But I think that in order to be the most transparent that you can be, telling people things as they happen keeps people informed, because the worst thing that can happen is somebody can hear about something maybe coming down the pipeline, but they don't know about it and they don't talk about it right away. So all of a sudden people start making up stories of their own. And so getting information out immediately is one of the best ways to be transparent, and then answering the questions that they have. And if you don't know the answer, it's okay. And it's preferred when you say, you know what, I don't know, but I'm going to try to find out for you. People know when you are not being honest with them. They know what's BS. And if you try to make up an answer, they can smell it. So just tell them, you know what, I don't know. I don't have the answers for everything, but I'm going to try and I'll find out. And then make sure you get back with them as quickly as possible.
Thank you so much, Leah.
You're welcome.
I do have another one that came in. How do you handle a need for strict attendance with the millennial mindset?
So obviously there are jobs everywhere where you need people to be in their job for their entire shift. And today's worker wants a little freedom and flexibility. What's the big deal if I come in 5 or 10 minutes late? Or what's the deal if I want to leave 5 or 10 minutes late? So one of the most effective ways to help people understand the importance of a strict schedule is by setting that expectation, helping them to understand how they work together as a team, so that if you're 5 minutes late, that means that this person cannot leave. And that may not mean anything to them in the immediate, in the moment that you're talking to them. But if you can help them develop relationships with one another, remember, people are loyal to relationships. So the more I know my neighbor that I'm working with, the more I feel loyal to them if I have a relationship with them. So that if as the supervisor, I can come back and say, you know, that is really hard on so-and-so when you're 5 or 10 minutes late, all of a sudden you feel a little bit differently about that. And really, one of the best ways to do it is recognizing the people that are there on time. Remember, what is recognized and rewarded is repeated. So if I recognize you for being there on time, that's probably going to make me want to do it again. For that person who is chronically late or chronically absent, they're going to eventually notice, nobody ever says a thing to me. And maybe they will work a little bit harder to be there on time. But remember, appreciating when they do something correct. So if that person is chronically late or chronically absent, paying attention and noticing and saying something when they do make it on time, or if they do make it a week without calling off, that's really critical, because that says to that employee, maybe they do know I'm here. Maybe they are paying attention to me.
Great. Thank you so much, Leah. I do have another one. I am in an independent medical office.
Okay.
How do you offer upward mobility in a small medical office when there isn't anywhere to go unless someone leaves?
So that's where that jungle gym comes into play. How can we give people more opportunities to learn new things? Because learning new skills in today's work environment is value. And sometimes you are in a situation where there is no room for movement. And what I always tell people is when you do the right thing, it's always the right thing. And so sometimes you will have people that do need to move on because you don't have anything possibly available for them. But if you train them well, you help them find something that they want to do, they will always remember that. And they will tell people that you helped them. And doing the right thing, that's the right thing. Doing the right thing is always, always the best choice.
That's great. I do have another one come in. This one is any suggestions on ways to convince managers who are set in their ways that they need to change?
That they should change. You know, I always say that modeling what you want is the best way to get it. But sometimes when you're dealing with management that is a level or two or three ahead of you, and you know that they're the ones setting the policies for things like that, many times it takes showing them what the bottom line looks like. And what we typically find is that in the upper management, it is the dollar that makes sense to them. So being able to take those numbers of turnover back to them and say, you know, look, we got to change some things because this is costing us more money than perhaps you think, right? I say, don't be afraid to go to them and say, you know what? We've got some really, really creative ideas, and we've heard that there are other places that are being successful with those. Would you consider just listening to us? And that's a difficult thing to do. You know, as a Gen Xer, when I started working, I basically was told to keep my mouth shut. And if I stayed there long enough, I might have a voice at some point in time. But thank goodness that people today actually have the guts to be able to say what's on their mind. I love it when I hear younger people say things because I guarantee you, I thought them and I wish that I had said them. So if this is something that you are really passionate about, you know that this is the right thing, that y'all need to change in certain areas or certain places, by all means, get the courage up to go and say, would you look at this? Would you talk to these people? Can we bring somebody in? Just don't be afraid to do it.
Thanks, Leah. And do you think you could elaborate just a little bit further if that it may be the person we're having challenges getting to on that idea of change is an employee and not necessarily an upper manager?
Okay, so I have two schools of thought on this. One is sort of that mentality that people don't like being left out, and ultimately we hope that they will join the bandwagon. But we all know the employee or employees who don't want anything to do with it. They give you a hard time. They have a bad attitude. They don't want to change. They fight you at every step of the way. Sometimes it is okay to get rid of the people that are pulling you down. And that's a little scary today because we're trying so hard to hang on to people. But let's be honest, sometimes those ones that are not willing to change are more toxic than the people who are coming and going.
Thank you very much for elaborating on that.
Yep. You're welcome.
Any other questions, you guys? Feel free to go off mute and ask them or send them through the chat portal. We'll wait a few more minutes to see what other ones come in.
Yeah. And please know that if you have a specific question or something you want to talk about, please feel free to call us or email us, because we would love to talk with you and find out what you're doing well and how we could possibly help you with the specific things that you're going through as well. You know, we work with companies all over the country and we work in all industries. So we see a lot of things in different places that are really, really valuable. Something to think about is that today's employee really has the mindset of you only live once, you know, that YOLO mentality. And so helping the employee to find that balance of what is good for them as in conjunction with what is good for you as a company is really critical. You know, I was talking with someone the other day, and I'm 50 and he was 54. He is a project manager. He's got his master's degree. He's worked as an engineer for almost 35 years. And he recently moved from one job to another. And he said, Leah, I've been here 6 months and I don't like it. I don't like the job. I don't like the environment. I just don't like it. And he said, I know I've only been here 6 months, but I'm looking for another job. And that really hit me, that it's not just a younger employee that is looking for this balance in the workplace, a place where they like to work and they like their coworkers and they enjoy being there, they want to be there. That's not just an age thing. That is all of us that have a much lower tolerance for putting up with crap, so to speak. And that was just kind of an eye-opener for me to hear somebody that was my age say, you know what, I'm not willing to stay here. I don't like it.
Absolutely. I did have one more question come in, Leah.
Okay.
This one was about recruiting. Recruiting is their problem. How do we hire people who stay longer?
So there's a couple of questions. My first question that I would ask back is, have you looked at the positions that you're hiring for, and do you know what the average length of tenure is for those positions? Because many times we are kind of stuck in that older way of thinking that we want somebody to stay a long time, but many of those jobs have become stepping stone positions. So for instance, growing up, I grew up in a small town in Arkansas, and all my friends' mothers were bank tellers. They were bank tellers from the time I was little bitty until now. I go home and some of them are still working as bank tellers. At that particular time, that was a career position. But today, a bank teller is not a career position. It's a stepping stone to something else. So I would ask you to go back a step and say, okay, have we identified what are the stepping stone positions today that used to be career positions? Because that can help you when you're looking for an applicant, figure out, is this going to be a short-term position, short-term employee, or is this really somebody that we want to have some longevity to them? I was talking with a young man the other day. He was 33, and he said something that really resounded with me. He said, younger workers today expect that in their first or second or third job, that's a learning experience. That's where they're learning what they like, what they don't like. That's where they're trying to figure out how much money they want or can they make more somewhere else. And it's not until we get to a place in maybe 3, 4, 5 jobs in, and we have some more adult responsibilities, like maybe we get married or we have a house. That's the place where we start seeing longevity in our job. And so if longevity truly is what you're looking for, what I would say is look for somebody who is in that adult phase of life where they have responsibilities and bills to pay, and perhaps they are in more of a need for something stable than looking at that employee who may still be in that figuring out stage, what we call emerging adulthood.
Thank you very much, Leah.
You're welcome.
I do want to let everyone know, just some of the comments in the chat follow up. We will be sending a link with this recording of the webinar to everyone who joined us today, and you're welcome to share it. And just definitely keep in mind that we do work with organizations, associations, companies to host specific webinars if there's a topic specifically that you would be interested in us covering. We do consulting and have a lot of training in keynote speaking and breakout sessions. So there's tons of options to work with us. I just wanted to let you know that, but you will be getting a link to this webinar after today.
And thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining us. We're going to be doing more of these. So, be looking for those emails that come in when we say save the date flash webinar, and make sure that you tell the people that you know to join in. We're super excited today that we had over 100 people say, hey, we're going to jump on. So that's really exciting for us. And it validates for us that we're talking about things that mean something to you. So I hope you have a great day. Happy, what is today? Wednesday or Tuesday? What's today? Tuesday?
Yeah.
It's Tuesday. Happy Tuesday, yeah. May 15th.
And I
Look
will,
forward to talking to you guys soon.
yes. And just one more thing. As you can see on the final slide here, we do have our new Staying Power book that was just released back in just a few months ago. So please check that out on Amazon. You can order that Amazon Prime or even just regular. We even have the Kindle version available now if you are looking for additional resources as well. We've heard it's a good tool to continue to refer back to with a lot of these tactics in there. So yes, thank you so much for joining us, and please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.